Hello everyone, my name is Colleen and today I have been out along the side of the road picking chokecherries. They grow quite prolifically in our area, but there's not a lot of people that take the time to pick the fruit anymore and make jams and jellies and syrups from them. But I'm a kind of an old-fashioned gal, so I don't mind getting out there. I was worried the mosquitoes were going to be bad, but I must have just timed it perfectly because I managed to pick this entire gallon bucket full without even one bite. So I'm counting that a win. So I am going to get these in the sink to get them washed because, as I said, they came from the trees along the roadway, and so they're covered with dust. So I'll get them in the sink and washed up, and then I'll be back and we will make some chokecherry jelly today. Now I've got the berries all washed up and I've put them in a pot big enough to hold them, and I've covered the entire thing with water, like just so that it's covering the berries. And now I'm going to bring that to a boil, and I am going to boil them about 30 minutes, and then I'll be back for the next step. So this is the mix that we're left with after it's been 30 minutes on the stove. There is nothing appetizing looking about this, but we are about to change that. So I've just brought it off the stove maybe 2 minutes ago. And before I start to strain this, I'm going to run it through the food mill. Traditionally, my mother would just tie this all up in some cheesecloth, or even I've seen her, and I've done it myself, use an old pillowcase just to make sure that you had a pure liquid coming out of this. Today I'm going to use my little food mill. If you don't have one of these, you could still do it the traditional way. So I'm going to pour this into the mill and get started. And you just crank the mill. This helps to separate the seeds and the pulp as well as the stems, because I didn't de-stem all of these. And once they've all been through the mill, once I have this little bit through the mill, then I will dispose of the seeds and the skins and stems that are left, and then come back and I'll show you the next step in the process of making chokecherry jelly. I've separated the pulp, stems, and the seeds from the juice, and what I'm left with is the liquefied part that includes some of the pulp and the juice. And I'm just going to now strain this through a cheesecloth. I'm doing it with my big strainer inside a bowl. And this can be kind of tricky. And I probably make it trickier than it needs to be. Just because I'm kind of clumsy with this cheesecloth, but I'm going to slowly pour this in so that just the real clear liquid can carry on through. And I'll just keep adding to it as it goes down till it gets to a point where I either have the bowl full enough or I've run out of juice, and that's the case here. Now, once this starts to seep down, I'll gather up these corners and tie the top with a piece of twine, and then I may, depending on how heavy it is, just hang it off the doorknob and let it drain. At any rate, I'll show you what I'm up to. So this is the step we're at presently. And there it is, sure enough. Tied up to the door of my cupboard. And that's how I'll leave it till it's well drained, which could take some time. It might even, I won't leave it overnight, but I know that people have left it overnight. The cheesecloth is pretty porous, so if you're looking for a really clear jelly, then, which used to really matter a lot, then you're going to want to maybe strain this through cheesecloth 2 or even 3 times to get a clear liquid out of it. I'm not concerned with it being clear. This isn't for sale or gifts. This is what we're going to use. So I will just run it through the cheesecloth once, and then I will get set to make my jelly. So when I'm ready to do that, I'll be back. So now I've got my cloudy juice right measured out into my heavy bottomed and high sided pot, and I'm just following along with the directions that came with the fruit pectin, which is made by Bernardin. I do believe that Bernardin is the Canadian version of Ball, maybe, and I trust this brand here in Canada, and so it tells me that I need 3.5 cups of prepared juice, which I've already put into the container. 7 cups of sugar, which I'm going to measure out, and in this recipe using the Bernardin pectin, you shouldn't cut the corners, it won't set the same. I know it seems like an awful lot of sugar, and it is, but this is what we need for this recipe. 3, I better not talk because 4, I'll get lost. Seven cups of sugar. Now we're going to need a little bit of acid in there. The recipe calls for 1 tablespoon. Wait. Yes, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, just to bring some acidity to it. Which is required, and I would suggest that you use the prepared lemon juice, whatever brand you're comfortable with, because we do know that what the exact acidity level is in this juice. If you were using lemons, not all lemons are the same acidity value, so they don't, it's not something that you can rely on. The bottled ones have been prepared and they all have the same amount of acidity. So now we're going to give this a stir and take it over to the stove and get started over there. We are going to bring it to a boil, and then you'll pick me up over there. We're at a full rolling boil. I've added a 1/2 teaspoon of butter to help with the foaming, as per the instructions on the Bernardin pectin sheet. Now, many years ago when my grandmother made this recipe, she used apples in the recipe so that she would have pectin, because she didn't have fruit pectin, and then they would have boiled it down for a long time until actually when you took your spoon out of the liquid you could draw a line through it and it would hold. Then they knew that it was set enough. But that required a lot of time and boiling away half the juice, or pretty close to half the amount of the juice that you had strained out. So this seems like a better method. It's certainly an easier one. And there goes my timer. Okay, at this point now I need to stir in the 2 packages of fruit pectin, and these are just the liquid rather than the crystals. I enjoy working with the liquid quite a bit actually, and it requires 2 packages. So in we go, and try and stir a little as I go. And it will definitely come back to a boil, which it's doing right away. And we will time that again for 1 more minute. Just at this point you need to keep stirring it and stir it down, but don't turn it down. Be mindful that if this splashes out, it can be very hot, so make sure you're protecting yourself and the surfaces around you, because this is basically a hot syrup, and if it sticks to your skin, it will burn before you can get it off. I'm just double checking my timer, and I have a few seconds left to go, and then I'll move it from here over to the counter, where I'll let it rest for around 5 minutes, skimming the scummy parts off of it as I go, so that we don't end up with, you know, foam on the top of our jars. Now, you can't see it from this angle, but we have the canner hot and ready to go right beside this pot, and our time is up. Follow me there. While you're doing this is the perfect time to have a batch of biscuits in the oven, so that when they come out, you can add a little butter to the biscuit, and then a little bit of this amazing chokecherry jelly. I'll put a link to the recipe for the biscuits. And wow, that would be quite the reward for yourself after time spent out in the ditch picking and then bringing them in, and the work that it takes to get them to this point. Foraging is a pretty simple thing to do if you have the plants and trees close by you that you can do this with. Otherwise, there are other ways that we'll cover in an upcoming video on how you can make jelly for your family without foraging for it. Stay tuned. Now I have my hot lids all ready to go, and I have my jars in a hot sink behind me. So I will just reach back, grab my ladle. Oh man, if you could see this entire kitchen, there's pink sauce everywhere. But I'm sure I'm not the only cook that manages that. So I'm just gonna turn these jars upside down, bring a few at a time over. I am going to use my funnel and just ladle these jars to, you know, within a ½ an inch of the top of the jar. A little less even maybe, because they don't need a tremendous amount of room. I'll move this one out of the way. And this sauce, this jelly, has turned out to be just such a pretty color. As you're working with it in the beginning, it's kind of this funny pink color, and it looks kind of dubious, but by the time you get to this stage, you can see the color has greatly improved. You can tell when your cupboards are getting full, because you no longer have matching jars for every project, and you have to use up what's left. And that in itself is a good feeling, knowing that the cupboards are full and that you have some wonderful homemade things put up in your cupboard for the winter ahead, or for whatever time ahead. Definitely not everything that we make around here survives through the winter, because we kind of eat as we go, and we don't just can in the summer and fall. We kind of can year-round as things become available to us. There's 6 1-cup jars. Here's a 2-cupper or a pint. Now this last jar, which is a pint, it will be the one that we use right away. because it's not filled all the way to the top. So I will put a good sealing ring on it, which is not usually what I do, but that's what I happen to have at hand. And I will put this band on to hold it into place, but this one won't go in the canner. Now here go the rest. I'm just going to put, make sure that all the rims are clean. And you have to double check with jelly or jam because they tend to stick onto the rim and you don't always see that it's stuck there, so make sure that that's the case. Just fingertip tight. That one's ready to go in the canner. And do the same with the rest of them. Now I'm going to water bath can these for 15 minutes. Ow. Sorry. I'm going to water bath can these for 15 minutes in my canner. You don't have to have a canner for this project, so if you're just starting out, don't worry about that. You can certainly use a good deep pot like a soup pot, or any pot where you can put the jars in the bottom of the pot and then still be able to cover the tops of the jars with 1 inch of rolling water. Also, one of the things to check, make sure as you're going around that you check your rings to make sure there are no rusty bits on the inside of the ring here. Because if they are, the seal may seem like it's sealed well, but it didn't necessarily reach the final grip. I hope that makes sense, because the rust would stop them from their natural movement. Oh boy. Well, I am very happy with today's adventure to the bush, and look forward to many more. I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you have, that you will consider sharing it with a friend. Give us a like, that really helps us out, and subscribe to the channel and share with other people that you think may be interested in canning this way. I hope that you're all well and safe, and that you will take care of yourself until we meet again.